Once we've defined a function, we can use it over and over and over again. It can be called on from within other function definitions and from within other function calls. In this lecture, we'll focus on this type of function reuse. In an earlier lecture, we wrote two functions in triangle.py. Here, we have revised versions of the two functions, written using the steps of the function design recipe. Now, let's recap the steps of the function design recipe. We begin with examples, an example or two. Next, we add the header, followed by the English description of the function. We code the body, and then we test it by executing the example function calls. We'll now add another function to triangle.py. This new function will calculate the semi-perimeter of a triangle. The semi-perimeter of a triangle is simply half of its perimeter. Let's start with the example function calls. We're going to name this function semi-perimeter, and it will need to take the lengths of the three sides of the triangle as its arguments. For this example, those values are 3, 4, and 5. The function will then return the semi-perimeter, in this case 6.0. Let's add one more example. This time, we'll use floats for a couple of the arguments. And with these values, we expect the function to return 12.9. The next step of the function design recipe is adding the header of the function. We use the keyword def, followed by the name of the function, in this case semi-perimeter. And now we provide each parameter, side 1, side 2, and side 3, along with their types. We use type float because if we want to pass an integer value, an int is a subset of the type float. And then this function will return a float value. Next, we'll add an English description of the function. This function will return the semi-perimeter of a triangle with sides of length side 1, side 2, and side 3. Now we're ready to code the body of the function. I'm going to start by calculating the perimeter, adding sides 1, 2, and 3. And then because I want the semi-perimeter, I'll divide that result by 2. Notice that part of the body of the semi-perimeter function is exactly the same as part of the body of the perimeter function. Rather than duplicating the code to calculate the perimeter of the triangle, we can instead call on the perimeter function from within the body of the semi-perimeter function. By reusing the perimeter function, we reduce the risk of error when calculating the perimeter, since that function has already been tested. The last step of the function design recipe is test. So let's test our semi-perimeter function now. We'll test the function by calling it in the Python shell. First, we need to run the module. And now I'm going to copy and paste each of the two example calls from triangle.py to the shell and execute each of them. The function returns the values that we expect.